All right, well, today we are back to work on upgrading and outfitting my 30 by 50 home workshop here. And we are on the tail end of a major renovation project that we took on where we basically stripped the whole shop down and we're kind of redoing everything and starting from scratch. The main purpose was to build and set up our pair of lofts here. So we had the 3-car stacker already, and then we added a storage loft on this side and kind of a hangout work area loft on that side. And setting all those up caused a bit of chaos, a bit of shuffling in the shop because a lot of things that were down here are now up there, and we need new things and things we're gonna move around. And we basically took the shop, flipped it upside down, shook all the change out, and now we're putting it all back together. So we're pretty well wrapped up with the lofts themselves. We've still got some small odds and ends here and there to do, like handrails, and there's still some more furniture that's gonna go up on this one, and there's stuff still, but they're functional and they're in use. We even got our grip tape done on our steps. Decided to go with red to, make it high vis. And, have a nice little accent color. But for the most part, we've got a home for everything, and everything is home. And now it's time to start building some new things. There's something that we are really missing right now, and I have missed using it already. So basically, we need to build a new version of this table. This table ended up replacing this table. So now we need to build a replacement for its original purpose. So I wanted to get rid of this table for a long time, and I told myself when we did the new building that I was gonna get rid of it then, but honestly, the reality is I needed it. I couldn't get rid of it because we needed it. It's kind of now or never. So we changed up this table to take its spot, and now this table needs to be replaced. So the original purpose behind this table was to be a floating workbench. What I mean by that is a workbench that you can move anywhere in the shop. The main idea was to kind of have it between the two lifts to utilize that floor space, and you've got a workbench close by regardless of which lift you're working on. If you needed to move it in front of a car, take apart an engine, you got a workbench wherever you might need it, and one that's kind of central to the shop. So that way each other workbench can be its own thing for its own purpose. However, I kind of missed the mark when I built it, I built it out of wood, which I'm not a fan of doing because it makes it super bulky, and I built it too large. It's too big and bulky to do what I wanted to do with it, and it just kind of ended up staying in one spot, which is right here in front of the 3-car stacker. And it would really only get moved if you had to get a car out of the way. It's about the only time it ever moves. So it just kind of didn't work out like I was hoping. So we're gonna build a V2 of the table with everything we learned from the usability of that version and all those changes incorporated. So we're gonna be building it out of steel, which is what I should have done in the first place. And we're gonna be adding in storage. It's gonna be a different size, just different across the board. So that being said, I'm really excited to see how this comes out. That being said, before we can start building the table, we have some modifications to do to this table. So I had got these parking casters for our new table build. We actually installed a set on this table, but basically you've got a rubber stop. So you can crank that up, and the table's basically sitting on rubber feet, and it is solid, no flex, no movement. And then if you need to move it, you crank the stop back up into the body, and then you could roll it around on the wheel. These are great for something like this, that occasionally we might have to move it, but for the most part, it's gonna be in one place. The table that we're building, the whole purpose is for it to not just stay in one place. So these really aren't the best option for it, but what they are a great option for is this table. We're gonna use these for this table, which is also gonna lower it down some, which will be nice. It's always been a bit high. And then we're gonna steal these casters for our new table. These are perfect for that because they are really solid when you lock them all down, but they still offer good mobility when you got them unlocked. So nice compromise for both tables. So I wanna get this table knocked out first because we effectively have to use this table to build our new table. So thought we might as well get it dialed in first before we start building the new table. So it's at its optimum, So that being said, there's a whole lot of jibber jabber to say. That's where we are starting today. We're building the table. And then we'll get into the rest of the projects. But that's step one, because it's been a bit of a struggle lately, not having the main middle of the shop workbench. That being said, the table ain't gonna build itself. So I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. We're gonna get to work. Let's get to it. So the parking casters that I got for the new table build originally are a single stud type because I didn't want to have to deal with having a big plate like this since we're building this out of square tube, and this table is 2-inch square tube. We're going to be building the new table out of 1.5-inch square tube. So basically, I wanted to make it simple to where you didn't have to have a big plate, so I got the single stud type. But of course, on this table, since that wasn't really the plan, it is meant for the plate, but it should be relatively straightforward. We basically got to weld the nut in here so that we can thread this stud in and then tighten up the caster up against it. Now, the tricky part is the nut is you know, when you're trying to weld it, it's a little tricky not to get the weld spatter in the threads, but fortunately, these plates already had a hole in them. So basically all I had to do was get in there with the carbide burr and notch out edges for the little corners of the nut. I didn't even have to grind the whole thing open, and then come back and try to weld it as best I can, again, without getting that slag up in the threads and, you know, not building too high of a bead profile because there's a little pocket for these to stick out a little bit, but we want them to be relatively flush. So since we're going to be using the old casters on the new table, that means we got to make plates for them to bolt onto the new table. I thought about trying to scavenge the ones off the welding table, but it made more sense to just go ahead and do new ones. So Josue's working on that. One problem is this mag drill is set up. I set it up to work on the welding table, and obviously welding table is a little bit incapacitated at the moment. So we came up with a little method, and seems like it's going to work for him while he's doing that, and I'm finishing up the table, and already I am so happy with how much lower this thing is. That was something that's always been a little bit annoying about this table. It's a little bit too tall, and there's certain things that you're working on, you got to lean way over, and you can't get to them, so this all around should be a nice improvement. The table should be more solid, it's lower, and we get to use these better casters for what we're trying to do with the new table on the new table. It's, you know, everybody wins. All right, first official use of the new and improved parking caster table. What are your thoughts?
That's great.
News 13 would like a full report.
I can actually see what I'm working on.
Yeah, it definitely helps. It's also, you know, now roughly at the same height of this table, which is nice.
Aesthetically.
It definitely bothered me. Even with the old table, them being at such drastically different heights, this is going to be so much better for me welding because I'm, you know, it's like below hip height. I mean, we'll find out when we're building this table. So Josue is still working on the plates for the caster wheels. I am going to go ahead and start cutting our frame. We had to change the plan a little bit of the design because of how we want to add storage underneath. It will kind of not make sense at first. And then you'll come around, I promise. You'll be like, why is he doing it like that? There's a reason.
Yep.
So when I went to go get this material, they were about a stick short for kind of what I needed to get the material with an extra bit of material on each one. I usually like to get an extra, say, 4 inches on each stick or each cut, you know, and in this situation, I'm getting 2 pieces per each stick that I got, which I just get them cut down to size because I got to transport them in a pickup truck, you know, but they didn't have quite enough. So I had to basically get the material cut at the length I needed it. There's no room for error. There's no extra. There's no drop. So once we cut these 45s in, that's pretty much it. You know, we cut the first piece out and then cut the end off the other side and we're done. So it's a little unnerving. You know, normally I have enough extra material to replace a piece if it's cut too short and enough material to play around with sizes and dimensions, but in this case, we do not. So every piece has to be exactly right. So before we started cutting the cross beams for the inside of the top frame, I wanted to go ahead and get it just set up and tacked up. That way we know the exact dimension we need to cut them to, because what we cut them to is going to effectively change what our leg length is going to be, because the drops from these are going to be our legs. So every piece you kind of got to think 2 steps ahead with it. You know, if you want to cut this piece a little bit longer to change this dimension, it might make this other piece too short. So getting the frame stacked up was important so we know exactly what we're working with. And it was a little bit tricky just because the table is pretty much, you know, this piece is about as big as you can make something on this table, and it's still completely fit on the fixture table. But all in all, it wasn't too bad, you know. Fortunately, our 45s all lined up nicely. We had nice good gaps and fit up. So it's really just a matter of welding it out once we got it all tacked up. And the only difficult thing when it comes to TIG welding something big like this is, you know, just repositioning it. It's not like a small part that you could just toss around to get to the other side of. You know, you got to pick up this whole frame and throw it around. But, you know, all in all, working with mild steel, it's kind of a nice change of pace from the more exotic materials like aluminum and stainless. Mild steel is definitely the easiest thing to weld. There's really nothing, you know, unique or weird about it that you've got to take into account. Like stainless, you know, you got to use a lower amperage, and aluminum heat soaks really quickly, and the temperature changes, and how much amperage you need changes, and all of that. Whereas mild steel is just, you know, it's basic. It's the staple, right? So fortunately, all of our 45s came out really nice on this, and I am very happy with that. The last few frames I've made, I always like to use 45s on the corners, you know, because it's cleaner. And the last few, I just had trouble getting consistent cuts that line up nice, but made some saw changes, and it's looking good. All right, well, we got both of the frames made. So basically the top and bottom of the table. We got consistent pieces, you know, nice square matching frames. Definitely worked out better than I could have hoped. So basically I want to go ahead and build the top now. So as I said, we're going to be adding storage to this in the form of pack out boxes and organizers like this. So we're going to use the drawer boxes, and hang them from the top, and then we have enough room to pop an organizer under each one of them as well. So that way we have everything we could use normally in the shop all on the table, because we're going to be rebuilding this whole area. So that's the plan. The goal is to fit 6 drawer systems, and then kind of however many organizers make sense. The way we have to build this isn't how I would necessarily do it. Let me get this frame back on the table. I'll show you what I mean. All right, so normally if I was building a table like this, my inner structure, the beam's going this way on the short side, right? However, on this table, we're gonna be doing them long ways. And we're gonna have 4 of them long ways, but the main reason is because we need a place to attach our pack out boxes. So we basically need a front spot and a back. Let me show you, I got these things so Sway found. So these go like that. Now your pack out box slides in there. So we need a place to attach these. Now you would probably think, well, you can do one on the front beam and then have just a cross beam for the back one. But the problem is, if we do it on the front beam, then the box is gonna stick out past the edge of the table. So we need a beam, about 3-4 inches in, and then one back here, and then the same on the other side, because we're gonna have the drawer system like here, and then here. So it's gonna get a little tight. We gotta be pretty accurate with our locations for these beams so that we have the right spot to attach these things to. But if we get it right, it should be pretty solid. Frame size is like just big enough. Should be just big enough. Alright, well, it should be good. was gonna do 3 support bars, but I think I'm probably just gonna do 2. It really doesn't need much. But if you're trying to figure out how to determine spacing, right now we got 68.5 inches is our inner diameter here. Now let's say we want 2 bars. You don't divide it by 2, always add an extra. So we're gonna do 68.5 divided by 3. That gets us 22.8, which is 22.7/8 we could call it. So we'll go 22 and 7/8-ish. And then from there, 22 and 7/8-ish. And then we should have the same number-ish here because we're changing from a fraction. Yeah, we're 22 and 13/16 here. So these would be our center points for 2 crossbars. It's like, say we wanted 4 here. I'll give you an example. Say we had 100 inches. This was 100 inches. And then we say, okay, we want 4 beams divided by 4, 25 inches. So you've got 25 to the first one, 25 to the second one, 25 to the third one, and then 25, that last 25 lands you at that end beam. So that's why you add 1 to get your actual dimension. All right, we need to cut a pair of pieces for this. 29 on those. All right. All right, well, I gotta say, man, I'm kind of really enjoying doing some MIG welding for a change. I'm still rusty, but we're getting there. We got some, I don't know if you can even see them in the camera, but we got some decent looking okay beads, but it's been kind of fun, to be able to blaze through welding this stuff up compared to TIG welding. It's definitely a good bit faster. Normally I don't care because, I'm building one-off stuff like this. It's not like I gotta make 5 of these things today, and get them all welded out where like every second counts, but also it's, it's a workbench. It's gonna get painted black. You're not gonna see the welds. Might as well speed up the process and MIG weld it. Plus, it's been kind of fun. The downside is it's kind of messy. You get spatter, fumes and all that stuff. But anyway, we got our bottom frame done with our crossbars. They definitely didn't need 3. We got our top one done. This thing has some weight to it, but like I said, we had to do those 4. So anyway, that's done. That's done. I got my little feet. We were going to originally weld these plates straight to this, but I ended up having to go a little shorter with the legs, which are still over there, just because of material length. And also, the bolt pattern is a little tight, so the little feet will give us room for the bolts. Boom, done, bam, bada bing. So I'm going to weld those on to this part of the frame. Then we're going to flip this thing, grind the other part, and then we're ready, almost ready to weld the 2 together. I want to get all those pack-out brackets bolted on first, though. So that'll be way easier to do, and that's just a single piece that we can flip upside down, measure, drill, blah. But we're cruising right along. We're getting there. And that is all the material drop we have left. That is abnormal for me. Normally, I get way too much material. That way I know for sure I have plenty. Oh, jibber jabber. Let's get back to work. Let's get this frame wrapped up. As far as welding the feet on is concerned, my goal is to get them kind of as far in as possible, but while also having the bolt holes accessible. So I decided to offset them in a little bit to keep the plate from sticking out. That's something that's always bothered me about using these same casters on the welding table, is that the plates stick out and it's, you know, they're just kind of in the way. But I'm sure there's something I'm not thinking of. This may come back to bite me later. It's totally possible, but it makes sense. You know, keep them in, keep them tucked. So the last thing standing in our way of putting these two tops, the top and the bottom together with the legs, is mounting these pack out brackets. And there's a lot of them. I mean, we got to mount a gajillion of these things. So we decided to go ahead and just drill and tap it and use M4 hardware instead of self-tappers, because self-tappers in thick steel, they like to break, especially good quality stainless self-tappers. So we just decided to go the drill and tap method. We're only using 4 per. Now, this may not be enough. I think it'll be enough, but, you know, we have any sort of incident, you know, we can take care of that then. Add some more. I just realized, like, how we have to put these on. Like, I don't know, I was thinking they'd go in the other way. Oh, yeah. Dialed. 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 So with the brackets all bolted on, drilled and tapped and mounted, it was time for what is one of the quicker parts of the process, but is also one of the trickiest, because these legs have got to be square to the top frame and to the bottom frame, which is why it was critical that our frames are the same size, and everything's got to be square to each other. You know, we could have it lean one way or lean the other way. There's a lot of squaring involved at this part of the process to make sure all the other work wasn't in vain, because if we don't get these nice and square, the whole thing is going to be cattywampus. So I did a corner tack on the inside before we put the top frame on so we could move it around, and then we could go ahead and start welding out basically the top side and then work our way down to the bottom side. But as I got to this last beam, I noticed that it just wasn't quite right now that everything had got shifted around. So I had to cut the tack, which I absolutely despise cutting tacks. It's not fun. It's like when someone tells you to drill a bolt out. Like, it's just easy. You just drill it out, no problem. It's like cutting a tack. It's usually in a hard to reach place, and then you cut it, and then it's in the way, so then you got to grind it down. And I don't like cutting tacks, but we had to cut 2 tacks. Yeah, it's the cost of doing business to make this thing nice and square. So with the frame all welded up, we could finally get to painting this thing. That is one of the things with fabricating things out of steel, is you got to paint them. So we got the brackets off, got ready to paint them, but I forgot to press record. All right, well, you guys, you fell asleep, i.e. I forgot to turn you on. But we got the frame done. We got it painted. It's looking pretty good. Got a full coat of our specialty. Dude, this is our forte. Black high performance enamel Rust-Oleum. I do love this paint because it is very durable, especially for spray paint. But Josue's going to throw a coat on the top and she'll be painted, and then we can put it back together. We're almost there. Pretty happy with how this thing has come together so far. Sometimes you got this whole idea in your head how something's going to turn out, and then you put it together and you're like, that was not at all what I was thinking. So we're going to obviously need to do a top for that, which we're going to do something similar to this. And then we need a bottom as well so we can store stuff. Same with the welding table. Something I've been meaning to do for a while is put a bottom on it so we can store stuff. That being said, though, obviously it's a big open area at the moment, and it would probably be okay, but I would like to put at least a middle beam in. And fortunately, the frame for the welding table is 2x2. And we happen to have a piece of leftover 2x2 from building the cross beams on the bridge. We need 30 inches. And as luck would have it, 36. Just keep cruising along. We're making good progress. Let's get back to it. good. It's a nice roller. You're always good. These casters were a good choice. She's wrong. Oh, we missed the whole big spot.
That one?
Yeah.
That's going on
I
with
thought
the
you
top.
wanted this. This is why I like building things out of steel. This table is way stouter than that table. This is 8th wall, 1.5 inch square tube. But it is just so much slimmer across the board because it's steel. Instead of being a freaking 2x6, it's a 1.5 inch square tube. I knew better when I built that table. No offense to that table. It's perfect for what it's doing right now. But I was planning on building out of steel, and then last minute I was like, it's easier to get wood because every hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, they all carry wood. They don't carry steel. You gotta go to the steel supply place. Anyway, I'm glad we did this one out of steel. That was one of the many reasons to redo it. So yeah, we gotta do a wood top, obviously, MDF, and then wood bottom. Go from there. Look, it matches the TEs. Gray, black, and red. Meant to be. It was meant to be, and the engine with the stand. All right, well, I went today and picked up a sheet of MDF before the rain came. I was a little worried about that. It's been raining every day, and it's gonna rain every day for the next week. So luckily, we were able to find a window, go get our piece of MDF. So now I just need to mark it out, cut it, and then we can start installing our tabletop for our workbench here. I'm not sure what we're gonna do as like the underlayer like we did on this table with the stickers. That's still, verdict's not out on that, but MDF top, epoxy, generally pretty A1 work surface. I like building things out of steel, but for a worktop, it's nice to have a wood worktop because it's not so cold and harsh, and yeah, we need to get to work. Let's get this piece cut up and keep on trucking. I'm so excited to see the end result of this table and the welding table and to get everything put up. It's gonna feel really good, so. That being said, I'm not gonna get to it if I don't quit jibber jabbering. Let's get to work, guys. Stop distracting me. We're getting to work. Got your tripod. I'm gonna set you in the corner here and we're gonna get to it. Money in the bank. Shorty, what you drank? So with what's always kind of the stressful part of cutting out the table, you never want to cut it even a 1/4 inch too short or too narrow or a 1/4 inch too long or too wide. It's gonna look bad. So once that part's done, it's like, yeah, we're good to go. So instead of self-tapping this on, I'd even thought about gluing it on like we did with the wood workbench table. We're gonna drill and tap this on, so that way it's something that we can remove later if we tear it up, we want to make a new one, we want to do some changes, whatever the case may be, we want to repaint the frame, who knows? We can just unbolt it, take it off, and do what we need to do, and then bolt it back on. So it takes a little more time, a lot of planning and measuring, but definitely way nicer to do it this way. All right, well, the top is done. Aside from the epoxy, pretty happy with that. No gap, no overhang, and now it's actually a table, but we still got some work to do. So we're gonna use that really nice tongue and groove board that was the leftover from the loft floors. So it'll be kind of 2 pieces, which should hopefully make it nice to get our notches all nice and clean. That's my my hope, at least. So let's get some boards, get back to cutting some wood. So one of the downsides with using these boards is since they're tongue and groove and they tie together on all sides, we only need them to tie together on one side. So we don't want that tongue or the groove to be our edge. So we've basically got to cut those off, and we've got to cut these down to length. But, we had them sitting there left over from the other loft project. Maybe something in the future we'll come up with, that these would have been a better use for. But for, it's one of those things. So we could either store them or we could use them, and this whole project is meant to give us some storage. So we're going to use them. little sliver of a piece. Even though I am kind of trying to get rid of these boards and use them on something so I don't have to store them, I don't want to waste them. So this piece, we're going to try to get basically a piece for each workbench out of, because we need to cut most of it away. I mean, we're only using 8.5 inches of it, so I don't want to waste the rest of it. So we're going to be able to ideally flip the joints when we go to cut the pieces for the other table, the welding table, and, you know, use 3 boards instead of 4 for what's really maybe a board and a half's worth of material. So we got the workbench boards cut and the welding table boards cut and fit. All right, well, we got our 4 done for the welding table here. This came out pretty good. I'm glad we got to kind of use that extra wood. One less thing to store and didn't have to get more. Huh, that rhymed. Store more. Anyway, now we got to basically do the same thing I did with the top. Drill through, tap, bolt. Thought about using self-tappers, but the stainless ones going into thick steel like this, they even regular ones, they like to snap, and then you're stuck with half a self-tapper sticking out. It's a whole thing. So instead, we're gonna drill and tap it. Use some bolts. We got plenty of bolts. Might as well use them. After he drills the holes, then we got to paint these. Then we can install them for good.
Before it starts raining again.
While Josue was finishing up drilling and tapping and bolting our lower floors in, I went ahead and got the top pulled off of the new workbench so that we could get ready to epoxy it, because it's kind of a messy process. So once the rain gave us a little bit of a break, it has been relentless. It was time to go ahead and paint these boards. Now, I've bounced back and forth between staining wood and painting wood, you know, and for my purposes, not really caring if it looks like wood. Honestly, painting it works out just fine, and it's plenty durable. You know, the can of paint makes me the carpenter I ain't, or something like that. We have our resin kit to do our epoxy. I did a tape wall. We're gonna since this kit came with a bunch of different glitters and dyes and stuff. We're still torn between chai red and regular red. I guess we'll try the regular red first. If it's not dark enough, we can mix in some chai red. But then some black and gold flakes. We're gonna try to do like a half mix or a little more than a half mix, and then switch color and then do that as we're gonna try to get creative. Yeah. We don't know if it'll work, but we're gonna try it because, you know, we gotta use the features. Since we're basically using this whole batch in one shot because we're pouring all of it on this table, instead of using the small mixing cups that it comes with, we're using this big 2.5 gallon bucket. But as we started to mix the colors in, it just was looking really orange. And I just was starting to panic because I really did not want it to be orange. So I started mixing more dark red and I started mixing black in. And then I realized that we should probably put some color back in since that was the goal. So I put some gold flakes and some red flakes. And then this is when using the features goes wrong because I thought, well, we got all these other color flakes and this other color dye. We might as well just start throwing random stuff at it. And yeah, that first pour, it's not looking good. It's not looking anything like what I had envisioned in my head. I mean, not even remotely close. It's basically this goldish brown. We were working it into the crevice and cracks and into the corners and trying to spread it out evenly, and we still had another batch to do. So I thought, okay, we went wild on the first one. Let's go simple on the second one. Just basic black dye, black flake, and try to pour some sort of pattern into this. Maybe we can salvage it. Maybe this will look a little better. And as I am pouring this pattern, I'm remembering exactly why I'm not an artist and I'm not a creative. It's not my thing. It just, oh man, it could not be any further from what I had kind of envisioned in my head. So Josue went ahead, since the boards were dry, and started working on bolting them back onto the bottom of the workbenches so at least we could see something that came out right. And I, left unsupervised, may have started just throwing random colors at this thing, hoping that something would make it look better than it was. All right, well, I went a little wild adding some colors, you know, just the raw dye that you would normally mix in. Oh no, it looks pretty wild, which was kind of the idea. I'm not sure if it would look better if I didn't go overboard with the splashing and drops of other colors, but either way, it doesn't look like plain boring MDF, which was the point. Lesson learned though, we now know it's just the red, it was really orange. I didn't like, you know, I hate orange. It's like my least favorite color. So I was like, it can't be orange, you know? So we started just throwing other colors in it to see what happened. And then, yeah, anyway, I'm jibber jabber.
It's art.
It's art, yeah. This is, you know, one of one.
Literally.
It is one of one. It's one of one. We'll see what it looks like tomorrow. Every time I walk by it, it's changed dramatically. So we'll see how it pans out once it's fully cured. So the epoxy did cure on the table, and I wasn't a fan last night, but I'm really not a fan today. As much as I hate to admit it, it just doesn't look good. There's no way I can look at it, squint one eye, upside down from any angle. I can't not fix it now, you know, this last thing that's going to be the most notable thing. So we're going to redo it. Worst case, I don't think it could look much worse than that. So anyway, let's get to work. Back to work. Yeah, to work. Yeah. Jibber jabber. Since this coloring turned out so vibrant, that's a word for it, I knew we were gonna have to cover over it. Otherwise, we're just gonna end up with dual layers of crazy petri dish looking colors. So scuffed it up just enough for the paint to stick, and we're gonna start with basically a black base coat. So at least at the bottom, under whatever we do on the top, at least there's something simple going on underneath. So for storage on the welding table bench, I got these. Our pack-out boxes are gonna slide into here. It actually should go like this. Boom. And be mounted to the bottom of the table. All we gotta do is screw it in. So I got two large ones. And then a shorter one, because we basically have enough room there to do two full size and then one half size. While we were waiting on the paint to dry and our thankfully free same day replacement epoxy kit to arrive, I wanted to go ahead and get these brackets done because I was real curious to see how this turned out. I was really debating and conflicted on using these brackets. They're kind of pricey. They're really meant for, you know, if you wanted to put these in the bed of a truck, or this would actually work good for something like in the boat. But, you know, I didn't want to just set these on there because then you're kind of wrangling them around when they're stacked. And I wanted to do it nice and do it right and have them properly secured to the bottom, but be removable. And these brackets were the best way to do that. So got them set up nice and even, got them mounted, and now we can put the boxes on. This is something we'll use more commonly. This is all my back purge caps, die grinder for sharpening tungsten, tungstens, wire brushes, that kind of stuff. Pretty satisfying though, I gotta say. Some nice organization. Was this empty? Yeah, it's an empty one. So we got a few empty ones left, but we got that area cleared out. They were there for right now, which they weren't attached to anything, which is why the brackets are nice. Because you can actually clip them in, and then, you know, if I need to take one off, I don't have to hold the whole bottom of the stack. I can just pull it off, and when I want to put it back on, put it back on. All right, now we need to go get the table. It hasn't rained. It's actually got sunny, which is crazy. But we need to go get the table, bring it in, and we can, you'll see. You'll see. Let me go get it. Trying to leave it out in the sun to bake the paint in. I didn't want to risk banking on, you know, getting some sort of color and design out of the epoxy because it kind of can react odd. So I decided to do a little spatter job underneath on the black, and worst case, if we go crazy with the coloring in the epoxy, you just won't even see it. But best case, if the epoxy's kind of clear and ends up that way, you got something to look at underneath. All right, our new kit is here. Got our two jugs. I've got to try. I'm already like, well, I could add some of this or that. No, Taylor, not doing it. Like there's this, it comes with this like silver foil flake stuff that we could put in there, which, I mean, there's silver and gold, which like maybe that would look cool, but I don't want to risk it. I just don't want to risk it. Maybe it won't look cool. I guess I could do like a little mini mix and see what it looks like. It's actually decent idea. I don't know why doing a mini mix to see how these colors reacted and kind of testing these dyes wasn't on mine and Josue's radar. We'll blame it on it being kind of late. We were trying to get this project done. It was late. We just went with it. We thought, worst case, we could just change the dye amounts or whatever. But mini mix is the way to go, I think. That way we can see what these different colors look like and the different amounts of flake and things like that are going to look like in here. And that way we don't end up panicking trying to fix orange and making it way worse in the process. So after my mini mix was complete, I kind of had, my trial run done, and I could go ahead and try to do it with the whole batch. And I wanted to mix this in one large batch so we didn't get any inconsistencies. And I managed to keep it simple. I was proud of myself. I really thought I was going to get lost in the sauce of using the features again, but I didn't. I just did some flake and a little bit of the dark red dye. And when I say a little bit, I mean the whole tube, but it wasn't doing that much, so I had to add it. But overall, it's looking a lot better than it was before. It's mostly clear with a little bit of pizzazz going on in there under the surface. That's really what I was going for, especially since we did the spatter underneath. So as it was starting to cure, I noticed that it was trying to stick to the table. It was getting through the tape just a little bit. So switched it back to the sawhorses. And really the hardest part of this process is trying to keep this thing at a level that gets the epoxy to level out consistently. But for whatever reason, no matter how much higher I put one side than the other, it still would go back to that side. And it was a constant struggle trying to move this around and get it to cure even thickness, All right, well, I am so much happier with how this is looking than the last attempt. Total dropping of the ball in the last one. But this looks good. I think this is perfect for the shop where it's dark, but it's not, it's got some flair with the red spatter underneath and a little bit of red tint to the epoxy and then the flake. I'm curious to see what the flake looks like once it's fully cured, because you don't really know what the whole thing looks like till it cures up completely. But overall, I gotta say, I am so happy that we decided to redo it. Take some more time, delayed the thing, but you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes, so I'm gonna let that cure overnight. I'll see you guys in the morning. All right, well, we let the top dry overnight. We do have a little bit of a pattern in the flake, which I don't mind. It kind of adds some character. Overall, very, very, very happy with this. It was definitely worth it. This is literally perfect. It's gonna look so cool on there with the pack out boxes. So that's what's next. Now that it's mostly cured, we've got to do our best to get this tape off. This side is going to be a struggle because it bulged on the first coat and the second coat. We got to re-drill our holes, countersink them, and then get it bolted back on. So then we can put the pack out boxes on this table finally and have a complete table. I'm so eager. I have not peeked and test fitted one on there yet. I've been saving it for the last, because that's going to be the coolest part of this table. But I'm also real excited to see what the tabletop looks like on the actual table. So this could go easy or hard. Wish me luck. I don't know which way. I don't know which one that is gonna be, but only one way to find out. Let's get to work. The whole time doing this epoxy, I was dreading this pulling the tape off process, especially having to do the second layer, because since it had already bulged on the first layer, I tried to kind of tape it back to minimize the bulging on the second layer, but it's a mess. It's always a mess doing this with epoxy. There's better ways to add a border, but the last thing we tried was some kind of poster board, and it melted with the epoxy, and it's just not a great way to do it. And grinding it down, also not the most ideal thing. Very, very messy. Definitely, you got to be prepared for the mess because it just goes everywhere. But we've got to get this table cleaned up. It's the finishing touches that are really going to make the difference on this project. So I decided to go ahead and just cut off a tiny bit of the wood and mostly the epoxy on these corners where the tape bulged out, because grinding it down, my whole shop is going to look like Santa's palace. I mean, it's just grinding the little bit of edges was so messy. So that worked out well. I got my holes re-drilled from the bottom, which is why I drilled them in the first place, even though obviously we were going to epoxy over them. That way I knew where they were and everything would match up, which as we got it back on, I had it backwards, so we had to flip it around. But everything's looking good. I went through and re-countersunk everything, and now it's just a matter of hoping that all the bolts still line up, because I kept the holes pretty tight. So it's a little hit or miss, but they did. We got all the bolts on, we got it tightened down, and now we can finally start adding these pack out boxes. But I gotta say, it was more of a struggle than I expected, because they're really heavy. And when you're trying to wrangle these things on there by yourself with the drawers, not easy. That's how it's supposed to go. After putting up quite a fight, the back out brackets weren't quite at the right spacing, so I had to re-drill them to get those hung. But we've got the one side hung with the 3 drawers, and then the 2 drawer side we're mounting to the bottom. And the idea here initially was to have these mounted to the bottom on this side and then hang the organizers from the top from those other pack out mounting points. However, I may have made a bit of a miscalculation when I measured this all out, and it's not going to work because they have to go to the back and then slide to the front. We had to just set them on top of the lower pack out boxes, which actually works out better anyway, because then they actually clip in and you just, release them with the latch. So honestly, kind of a happy mistake. So now that we've got everything kind of where it's supposed to be, we can start putting the drawers back in. I was hoping to kind of be able to swap these drawers around and put only the drawers I wanted here, but they're specific for the place in the box. Like the lower drawer, the middle drawer, and the top drawer are all different. So we had to shuffle some things around to get the drawers that we wanted over here. Some of the drawers that were together before we're not necessarily going to have together now because this is of where they are. We want only the stuff on this table that's going to be used on this table, when you're working on a car or doing something like that. So there's some rearranging required, but it's looking good. It's coming together. All right. Well, that's pretty much the gist of it. Obviously, we're still missing some drawers. I've got to do some more reorganizing, and while I'm doing it, I don't want to rush through it. I want to take my time to shuffle some stuff around. Like for example, this is kind of like my, O-rings, injector O-ring kit, copper washers, snap rings. There's more stuff that I'd like to add to this drawer, but it was barely fit in the thinner drawer, so I moved it to a larger drawer, but I want to put the organizer or dividers in, but I got to find where I put those, and just little stuff like that I've still got to do. Same with the crates. That's like my heater hose crate, which I might transfer those somewhere else, but we can fit a crate under each one of these, and then we are fully maximizing this thing's footprint. This is a ton of wall space that is now a workbench, and it's mobile. And I can push it around pretty easily. It's got some weight to it, but we're not moving this around a ton. It's just, it needs to be mobile enough to where you're willing to move it over to the area where you're working. If we were working in between the 2 lifts, we could put it right here. Also, it's small enough now to where we could tuck it out of the way when we're getting cars on and off the lift. That was always the struggle with that one, is there's nowhere to really put it. It's so large, most of the time you couldn't get it out of the way. So, I'm really happy with this. Few finishing touches to do. Got to finish reorganizing. Got to paint this border, which I already got the paint down, but I need to take some time, put some music on, and just go through all of this stuff. A lot of these has turned into junk drawers, and that stuff can get relocated to totes, and there's stuff to do. As you can see, this is, it's been scavenged all the drawers out from over here. So, I've got some more reorganizing to do on my side, but overall, I am very, very happy with how the table turned out and how the shop's turning out. Just going up there, I had to go up there to get the paint supplies, and it was so nice to just walk up the steps, cross the bridge, grab the paint supplies. Amazing. So, again, still some tidying up to do. Look at all this space. This is all basically going to be free space, because this stuff's going to get put up. And we have all this free space open now compared to before. And we are about to have that wall open too. But I've just got to nail down my decision on, either spending a bunch of money on a giant toolbox or doing cabinets or what we're going to do there. I did have to get a replacement light. I'm going to put this one here because that one broke. I've had these things up for a few days or a week maybe, and they already broke. So I'm going to put that one there so at least these 3 match. And then put the new one there. This is an older version, so I couldn't get a replacement of this. So anyway, I've got a little stuff to do. But pack out storage here. I put 2 crates back here, which is kind of nice to have. So I'll probably have my abrasive overstock there, and then got my jigsaw and my circular saw there. Still got to finish taking the rest of the stuff off that table so I can get rid of it. Like I said, there's a few things. I could jibber jabber on and on. I am jibber jabbering on and on, but man, I'm really happy with how far this place has come, and it's just that last little bit of organizing and putting stuff up, which I really want to take my time on, and we'll be in amazing shape and ready to start on the new projects, which this was my whole goal, was to get the shop, everything I wanted to do for now done to the shop so that we could start on our new projects in a sorted, clean, organized work environment and have places to put things when we're done with them, you know, or while we're working on them. We have places to put stuff finally, which is something we have been severely lacking, which makes it hard to keep projects organized. So jibber jabber, I said I'd quit. I'm quitting. The jibber jabber. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for subscribing. You know, yeah, let me know what you think of everything. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's been enjoyable as always. It's good to see you guys. And yeah, I can't wait to see you next time. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye, guys. Have a good night, day, whatever it is.